Okay, I'm ready to do part 2 of this board meeting. So let's get with it.
What we'll do next is just give you a quick update on the rail safety audit and a little presentation on that. Mr. Kelsey.
Excuse me.
Thank you. Good morning.
Excuse me, Doug. This
Doug,
is
before you begin,
I just want to mention, there's a bill in Salem, it's the operator assault bill, for anybody in the uniform, union or not, across the state for assault, and people can press charges. All the unions are supporting the ATU bill, some very vigorously, i.e. me. So hopefully you get...
Okay, Mr. Joe Esmond says he's supporting the operator assault bill. We've talked about that earlier, about who started that. It was Michael McCurry and Frederick Casey. Is then morphed to Trimet and ATU, and Mr. Edmonds, Joe Osmond, I don't know how you pronounce it, is supporting the bill. You know, I want to make a comment about old Joe there. He's been on the board a while now, and this is supposed to be the union guy. He's the union guy. And I don't think I've heard him once speak up for ATU 757 members. I mean, if somebody can prove me wrong, please do. But I don't think he's ever said one thing positive about the ATU 757 and the contract. I don't remember him ever taking a stand once defending union members.
The support of the Opals and bus rapid transit, et cetera, et cetera. So.
And we know we're very pleased to be working
Good.
in conjunction with the ATU and,
Right.
and related to that bill, and it seems to be getting a very good reception.
Yeah, I think it's going to go.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Vice President, members of the board. This is a continued follow-up for over a 6-month period for the rail safety audit that was conducted late last calendar year. And I just wanted to report to you on,
If you haven't been paying attention, the so-called rail safety audit was conducted by some gentleman, apparently a friend of Doug Kelsey's there, who was a member of NTSB, and he evaluated all Trimet rail operations, and he came back with this very negative report, basically saying they're very sloppy and they're not following through on rule violations, and eventually there's going to be a major disaster. So he's reporting now to the board on where that's going. So let's hear what he has to say about it.
about 3 key slides here, and in the interest of time, I'll try and just focus on just the key salient points. And for the viewers at home, it's just on the back screen there. Overall, we're proceeding nicely. Out of the 42 recommendations, 7 items have been closed. We're ahead of schedule on the so-called the 0 to 6 month range. We're slightly behind on the 7 to 12 month area. We're spending a significant amount of time on that 0 to 6 month focus right now of getting some of the policies in place, et cetera, et cetera. Personally, that's not a concern. It's more of a phasing timing issue, but I think overall we will be on target as that time approaches. The focus very much is on that 6 month, but overall progress is proceeding on target and as expected. In terms of the progress itself, to the second slide you have in front of you, there are you can continue to see since last October when the report was provided to us, the audit that is, the actual open rule violations continue to decrease. So we've come from approximately 450 violations that were open at the time, which require inspection time, reviewing all the data, gathering all the materials, down significantly, and again some slight progress since just last month here, down by another 5. So we've got ways to go yet. The goal is to get this down. There are always going to be some that are outstanding, but I think we're hitting this very hard. This is a top priority for us.
I don't know. I guess what happened was that guy Don Ellison, who was in charge of the rail, didn't do any investigation on rule violations. Somebody would blow a signal or something, and he'd write it down, stick it in a drawer, and he didn't do any investigation. I think this is what he's talking about. So they're investigating them, they're reporting on them, they're looking into these rule violations. You know, once again, I don't know about any of this. It seems very nebulous. He never talks in specifics. We never really hear any actual specific incidents he's talking in these nebulous terms, which I think takes away from his credibility.
And I think you'll see over the next couple of months in particular, you're going to see that drop even further with a lot more significance than just the month over month. So overall, some very nice progress. You can see the breakdown between some of the key areas: door platform, rule violations, signals, and other general categories. Things that can fall into the red category, if you will, this other category can be things like proceeding without authority to where the OCC or the command center has given authority, maybe somebody premature moved to train, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a kind of a compilation of things, but that's just one example for you. So progress looks pretty good, pleased with it. What's really interesting, though, is the last chart I'll share with you, is the overall rule violations on a per million train miles. So the normalizer, if you will, is distance. So how many, regardless of the size of any system, how are we doing? So if you look at this, you can see very clearly we've come from 320 incidents per million miles for the month of October down to 153. So we're on our way.
So what does Max do 1 million miles a month if you add up all of the trains running at all the times? Is it actually 1 million miles a month? I'm not sure how is that calculated. Is it the total amount of time divided by the total amount of incidents, or is it 1 month divided by the incidents, or is it a rolling 1 million miles? It's another very unclear statistic.
This takes a tremendous amount of attention, and focus. And part of it is cultural. Some are physical changes, you can see, but some are policy changes. But at the root of it is really the attention to detail. Some of our other bigger programs have not fully kicked in yet. Increased training focus, things of that nature, with actually more resources on training, not just covering the general training elements that are out there, but even rewiring some of our programs fundamentally to find a new level of professionalism out there that really needs to help support these operators to be successful.
I've listened to his speeches about this. I'm one of the few people that actually listens to this stuff. And his premise is that the light rail operation at Trimet is a disaster. That's what he's saying. So people need to understand. He's saying that Trimet must have been very lucky over these years that there weren't so many disasters that they stopped counting. I told you in a previous clip that I've seen the statistics for Trimet light rail versus other light rail, and there was nothing outstanding. They were all within the normal range of incidents and casualties. All of these light rails operate statistically the same, and they keep track of these statistics, and I saw a comparison, and Trimet Light Rail was not it was right in the middle of the pack in terms of incidents. So his premise is light rail at Trimet is a goddamn disaster, everybody's lazy, millions of rule violations, and nobody's looking into them. But, the statistics don't prove him right, is what I'm saying. The long-term statistics don't show any specific problem at Trimet versus any other light rail system in the country.
And most of them are, but it's managing the exceptions here. A couple things I will share with you that are kind of underneath this chart is since October, our actual signal violations are down 53%. Our speed violations are down 282% compared to where we were. And our train order violations are down 188%.
All right, there's our first hard statistics, and so yeah, okay, so he's illustrated for us, and I assume his statistics must be right, the severe nature of the problem before, and look at how these statistics have gone down by hundreds of percent now. So I guess that proves that he was right. There was some kind of a real deficiency going on there that nobody really knew about, including me, because I listened to it and I didn't notice anything spectacularly wrong. Of course, I don't have anything to compare it with, so to me, this sounds like a tight operation.
So we've come a long way, but we still have a long way to go. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Directors, I believe you spoke about getting a simulator.
Correct.
Has that happened, or
It is underway. Those things are not a short term. We have gone to the marketplace, and it's more of a, we're looking actually this time, unlike the bus one, we're actually looking at a virtual simulator. So this one might be a little bit different in its product, but it will take some time. It's sure not in the 0-6 month. You're probably looking at the 1 year plus range by the time you get it in. The goal here, what we're hoping for, and we'll see how the marketplace responds, is to actually load our own network into it.
Yeah.
Not the theory of other networks and general practices, but so you can learn how you go through the Tillicum Bridge is very unique and different when you've got mixed buses. It's the only one in North America where you're actually managing buses and trains on a same bridge structure.
Hey, oh, it's the only one in North America where there's a bridge that has buses and trains on it. What are you talking about? This steel bridge has buses and trains. The hell's he talking about?
As one example. So yeah, it will come, but it's not in that short-term period.
Okay. So this
Very excited about this, actually.
So this isn't an off-the-shelf item?
Well, we want to have it as off-the-shelf as possible, but there's one part, certain elements I think we want to customize, if you will.
Okay.
So I'm always nervous about sort of cradle-to-grave customization, because then you own all the changes that go on with it.
Yeah.
I think we want to minimize how much we have to overlay of ourselves, but there's a certain part I think we're going to want to overlay.
Okay. Good, thanks.
So there's Esmond trying to look like he's interested, and he asks this question. You can't just go to the store and buy it, and Kelsey gives him this weird answer like, yeah, we could, but then it won't. We have to add our own. I don't know. Something about Kelsey doesn't. Something about that Kelsey guy doesn't add up to me. There's something I don't like about that guy. I'm not sure what it is.
Well, I certainly do want to commend Doug as well as General Manager for bringing those percentages down on those areas. That's great news, and we look forward to continual improvement till we get to 0.
You know, I don't mean to be picking on Bethel, but really, he really needs to go. I know they're all sock puppets, and it doesn't really matter who's in the chair, because in the ultimate reality, they don't have any say anyway. But he seems particularly incompetent, and I find Dr. Bethel one of the more intolerant members of that board. I remember he couldn't wait to get Lane booted out of the board meetings. I mean, Dr. Bethel is really a disgrace. He can't think straight anymore. He's been caught numerous times falling asleep at the board meeting, to which he responded, "Oh no, I have an eye infection." You know, I don't know. Bethel is kind of the perfect sock puppet. You know, he shows up in body and he can barely think, and he does whatever they say.
%. Thank you very much.
Mike?
Yes.
And I just think it's very important that we note the cooperation that we've been getting from the ATU operators and staff, certain people, you know, the input. So I think it's a great partnership, and thanks for doing that, both of you guys.
Well, I just want to give credit to Anthony Forrester in particular. He's participating directly in these committees. That takes time.
Yeah.
We need his and others' viewpoints on this.
Yep.
We don't have it all right, and there's areas that we do have to make adjustment, and we're trying to hit this on a whole lot of fronts at the same time. So, as he and I spoke about last week, a lot of these times you can't really stack all your actions up on top of each other, otherwise you'll never get there. So sometimes you have to. It's an imperfect world as you're trying to manage transformational, cultural, and physical changes. So I really appreciate his support and leadership, and we've had some really open discussions, and it's really important.
Well, I happen to read Anthony Forrester's union. You know, once a month they send a newsletter around, and I don't think Anthony Forrester is quite as pro-Trimet as these people are trying to present here. Yeah, I don't know. We'd have to hear Anthony Forrester respond to that.
That's what I want to hear. Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. General Manager?
Finally, I wanted to just give a few quick notes on ridership. Overall, we did see a reduction in ridership in February, about 4.2%. The interesting thing is that
4.2% reduction in ridership. That's a huge hit. And I don't know what he's going to say next, because I haven't watched this yet. I'm watching it for the first time right now. You know, if the system has lost 4.2% riders, that's a serious loss. And somebody who's watching the operation as closely as me, I can understand why the service is completely unreliable. I don't care what kind of propaganda Trimet puts out. I know the truth, and the few people that actually keep up with this material know the truth. The service has been highly unreliable, and it's been going on a long time.
But commuter ridership seems to be actually up, particularly for Max. An example of this, Orange Line ridership was up about 5.3% over February of last year. So that is a healthy percentage growth in terms of the commuter traffic. But at the same time, we saw weekend and Max and bus service or ridership down 8.5% and 5.7% respectively. So overall, monthly ridership was reduced. So we're continuing to look very deeply at this and looking at sort of the causes and where. Again, it seems to be off-peak. The commute is holding up well. But again, what we need to do, I think, is sort of figure out how to respond to that in the long term. And I do think some of the service improvements we have programmed are intended to help with that as well. If there's any comments or questions on that.
I do have a question in regards to that. I mean, ultimately, as we see the, I'll say it, kind of continual drop in ridership, I think it really starts to become something where at least I'm concerned about that. Although it'd be interesting, and this doesn't have to be at the board level or anything like that, but it'd be interesting to kind of see a breakdown of where those, I know you just referenced, some of the weekend stuff, some of the off-peak stuff. Ultimately, though, it's as you think about this, it really, I mean, we've only improved service. I mean, so I'm kind of challenged.
All right, well, Stovall is actually making a decent comment for a change. He's not just pontificating here. He's interested in what's going on, and he's not tracking on it like we are out here in the social media. If you've been paying attention, you'd understand why people aren't writing. I mean, nobody wants to be subjected to torture, okay? It's that simple. You don't understand how every time there's a delay, every time there's a broken down bus, every time there's a bus taken out of service, every time service is canceled, you're going to lose riders. Because if you have somebody who's waiting for the bus zooms on by you, it just doesn't bother to show up, you're not going to come back, okay? This is one commodity where people don't have to do this if they have wealth, okay? If they're poor, they're stuck. You're stuck with a Trimet and every other public transportation in the country. But if you have some wealth and a car, you don't have to put up with this shit. And if they had been tracking like we are, you understand it has not been good. Things have not been good, and have not been good for quite a while.
By the drop in ridership, and we've seen that now for quite some time because we've only improved service, and we're continuing to improve service. Except for I think we took some bus lines off or changed some routes when we did the Orange Line. The other component to that is that we've done things like the 2.5-hour transfer. I mean, I think we've looked at things that should enhance ridership, but yet we're seeing the ridership go down during this time frame. So I'm a little bit puzzled by that.
And
that was a good comment by Travis there. Okay, that's good. Okay, gives me hope that the boards are actually asking some questions. I know I haven't been watching these, so I don't know. But I mean, my experience is nobody really asks any hard questions, and even when they do, they don't. There's no follow up. It's kind of all for show. And let's see. It was a good question. Let's see what McFarland does with it.
You deserve and will receive a much more thorough report from us on that. And I would also note that we're doing some interviews of transit riders. And you'll see some clues of that in the presentation of the briefing on attitude and awareness annual update that we did as well.
So once again, Neil has no actual answers. This is the typical answer. We'll get back to you on this, and then they never get back to them. It never actually happens. You'd have to watch these to see how this works. They come up with the board might ask a very hard question, and they say, we'll get back to you, but they never get back to you. They never actually get back to you on any of this stuff. So, what I was going to say, Yeah, there's Neil doesn't have an answer. That's what he needs. We don't know. And the answer is what I just told you. The service is horrible. But they're not going to ever say that. They're never going to be honest about it. This discourse never includes the truth. Never.
But again, we will follow up with much deeper dive for you into all of that.
And I'll include a breakout between the choice riders and the transit dependent.
Yes, or as we do in the marketing world is, frequent versus occasional riders. And again, from the marketing perspective, it's always important to think about those occasional riders and how to move them into more frequent riders.
Okay, I remember what I was going to bring up here. A week after the board meeting, Trimet got its DHM survey out. And see, this is, I've talked about this on Twitter. Nobody pays attention to me, but I said there that how is it possible that 88% of the public approves of the job Trimet's doing, but yet they're losing riders? The DHM survey says 88% of the riders, of people in Portland, everybody, I guess, approves of the job Trimet's doing. But at the same time, Trimet's losing riders. It doesn't work, right? It doesn't make any sense. The DHM report has to be wrong. They must be phrased in such a way as to give Trimet the statistics that they wanted. Because if everybody was so happy with it, they'd be riding it, and they're not.
So, yes, we'll slice it in that regard.
All right, thank you.
Final two comments, Mr. President. One is I wanted to just note that we're in a different location today. I would say that we probably will be getting used to that. We've got another month or so where there's some remodeling going on at the City Hall, which pushes City Council to the meeting room that you have traditionally used. And then, of course, we have on the schedule here, years ahead, the complete remodeling of the Portland building. So we'll be trying out some different locations over the next few years. So I just wanted to note that, and it's important, particularly for the public, to note that it's really important to look where the meeting is, because it will be at different locations on different months upcoming.
It's pretty funny that he says that, since TriMet makes no effort to inform the public of these meetings. Zero. Nothing. Nothing on Facebook, nothing on Twitter, nothing in the media. Zero effort to inform the public that these meetings are even happening. So that's a load of horseshit that he just unloaded there.
Finally, the last thing I wanted to note is that we have a retirement of a very significant TriMet employee coming up, and that is Mary Fetch. Mary has...
I'm glad I watched this. I was wondering, TriMet didn't issue any of their news releases for the Mary Fetch retirement. I didn't see anything, don't they usually announce some significant retirement, like somebody like her who's been around this long? But have no fear, they did bring it up at the board meeting, and let's see how this is.
Been a stellar, steadfast communicator for TriMet for a number of years. She's taken shaky, non-media trained general managers under her wing. She's helped all of us communicate in an open and transparent manner, and she's been a consummate professional in her work with TriMet and has made a great accomplishment, many things to be proud of. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that her last day is this week, and that this is her last board meeting, and she's probably going, whew. But I wanted to acknowledge her and appreciate her work for us over the last years. And Mr. Board Vice President, that concludes my report.
Thank you. And certainly on behalf of the board, we wish to give our thanks and congratulations to you, Mary, on your retirement. And when you go to one of those islands, just send us some fruit back. Thank you, Mr. General Manager. Does any board members have any other questions?
I just want to say thank you, Mary, again, from me. And I hope your full retirement lasts longer than mine, which was about 6 months. So I'm back working part-time.
Yeah.
And thank you, Mary. Also, I mean, sometimes Mary's pulled me aside and I've asked her key questions, and she's always had great answers for me and given me great direction. So thank you very much for your leadership and guidance.
And in the short time I've been on the board, I've also benefited from Mary's advice and counsel and support, and I'll miss her.
Thank you, Mary. You've been great support, tutor, you know, and just an all-out nice person. Thank you for that.
Oh, well, I ditto. I can't top anything that anybody else has said. Thanks so much for your years of service, and congratulations.
Yeah.
We will move on then to our consent agenda. Items appearing on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and may be approved by the board in one blanket motion. This morning, the consent agenda includes the meeting minutes of the February 22nd, 2017 meeting, directs that the reading of all ordinances be by title only, authorizes the transfer of appropriated funds within the fiscal year 2016-2017 general fund budget, adopts a revised criminal records policy, updates Trimet trustees to Trimet's retirement trust for management and staff employees, appoints trustees to the Trimet Section 457 Deferred Compensation Plan, authorizes a modification to the contract with Emerio Design, authorizes a contract modification with Rail Car Company. Does any board member request the removal of any items on the consent agenda?
So they have taken all those little pork barrel contracts and stuck them in the so-called consent agendas. They just approve everything at once. They don't go over each agenda item and talk about it. They just, here, we'll take the whole basket and approve it at once. It's really another example of government trying to get its way with as little discussion as possible.
If not, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.